Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, the Insane Angry back at it again with another one. So, earlier in 2024, I made a video talking about my problems with Pokemon as a series and as a franchise. And I said I'd make another part 2 to the video discussing what I could do to fix those problems. It's 2025. I guess we should talk about those fixes. So I'm going to break this up into chunks and address each problem individually, and hopefully by the end of it, you can agree or disagree or fight me in the comments. You know, it's fine. I can take it. I've been doing this for over a decade. I think I'll be fine. So let's go through it. Number one, longer development times. And this will kind of bleed into other things, so it'll be like a snowball effect. So one of the biggest issues I think Pokemon has had as a franchise is having these 3-year development cycles. Nothing has gotten better through these 3-year development cycles, and has actually gotten to the point where people think that Game Freak can't even make the games right anymore. Look at all these problems with Scarlet and Violet. Look at all these problems with Sword and Shield. It's all your fault, Game Freak, because you don't know how to design Pokemon games. It's not really the problem. The problem is that they're stuck on this 3-year time wheel that just forces them to put out a game every 3 years. New generation every 3 years. And let's be real here, if you're trying to be super ambitious, how can you do that when you're stuck on a 3-year time limit? We actually even know through leaks of plans they had for certain games like Sun and Moon and X and Y and Sword and Shield that they just genuinely didn't get a chance to do because they didn't have time. So my issue has never been that Game Freak can't make the game. It's that they're stuck on this time limit that forces them to bum rush everything in 3 years. And generally, it's not healthy for game development. It's not healthy for a franchise that wants to maintain itself to the end of time. You got to give yourself some time. I would say extend the development time about to, instead of 3 years, to more like 4 or 5 years. This also goes into the next point. Pick a game engine and stick with it. It's crazy to me that through all the Switch Pokemon titles, yes, I know BDSP is made by a different developer, but the point I'm making is none of them really stick to the same engine. They're all using either different engines, with Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet maybe using the same engine. I'm not even sure, which is crazy to say because it should be obvious, right? But think about it. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Sword and Shield, Legends Arceus, BDSP, Scarlet and Violet, and the upcoming Legends ZA. And I think the majority of them, barring maybe 1 or 2 titles, use completely different game engines. Why are we doing that? Why is it when I went to Legends Arceus and I was like, I can't wait for Scarlet and Violet to use the same engine, and then I looked in the corner and went, wait a minute. Not even the same engine. Not even the same engine. What are we doing here? Jesus Christ. So that's the next thing. Third thing, going into like subtle game design elements here. I don't care what the fandom says, they're wrong. Do not put every single mon that currently exists in the game. It never made sense lore-wise, and it doesn't really help your new generation stand out. You know, one of the most annoying things I always thought that was in the Pokemon franchise, and X and Y is the prime example of this. I went into the grass in X and Y in the first forest, and what did I find? A Pikachu. Not a new generation 6 mon, a Pikachu. Why is that? Well, you know, we looked, and to be fair, I actually blame the fans for this problem more than I blame Game Freak, because what Game Freak did is get yelled at by the fans multiple times. It's happened during Gen 3, it happened during Gen 5, it happened during Gen 8. And they eventually just said, no, we're not going to do it anymore. And that's why Gen 8 had all that drama around Dexit because of it. Now they use the whole animation thing as an argument, and that didn't really help them much. But the point is, you do not need the whole Dex in every single game. Just put a portion like they've been doing for the last couple of generations. It helps older mons stick out, gives you a chance to use mons in areas of the game that they never are used. And I don't know, make mons actually viable through a playthrough. A lot of people don't bring this up because everyone's concerned about competitive and dex completion and friggin' it's mainly competitive is what people are concerned about. But one of the things I think they don't acknowledge is there are mons in other generations that never got properly used through a playthrough because they were stuck either at the end of the game or in a portion of the game no one cares about. Gen 5 had Heatmor and Durant and Braviary. By the time you got any, or Drudigan or Axew through Haxorus, you didn't get any of these mons early enough to use in a current playthrough. You had to wait until like the Victory Road section or even post game to get access to them. Remember Gen 4? It's crazy to me how much love Gen 4 gets and no one acknowledges that, hey, all the cool evolutions that we got in Gen 4, you couldn't use until post game. I think only like one of them is available before that, and it's still late game. Why do we have this happen? You know what would be kind of cool? If I could use a dragon type in the middle of the region and Dratini wasn't at the end of the game. The only gen I think they even let you use a dragon type kind of early that isn't a newer title is probably Gen 3, where I could get Trapinch or like right after the 4th gym. But still, why are we doing this? Once again, new generation can focus on less mons, a good chunk of new and old. Some of the old mons that don't get used or shown off as much because they've fallen to the wayside because of power creep and the lack of new innovation things going on with them. Hence why we keep around our forums Alolan, Galarian, Hisuian, Paldean. I don't care. The point is new forms for those mons. So spoiler alert, do not stop doing what you've been doing when it comes to the Dexit stuff. We need variety, and you need your mons to be shown off. Because let's be real here, Black and White 2 got stuck in that nonsense. Where Black and White 1, purely Gen 5. As soon as you crossed over and hit Gen 5.2, what happened? Oh, look at all these old generation mon back because no one likes ice cream cones and keys and shit. Now, this kind of bleeds into the next point, which is to talk about Pokemon as an RPG. Now, everybody who's talked about Pokemon and discusses Pokemon, what do? Babies first RPG, babies first RPG, babies first RPG, babies first RPG. And I'm sitting over in the corner going, that is not what Pokemon is. And realistically, it could be even just a traditional RPG, or at least JRPG, if it would just do one thing. Let its lore breathe through the games. It drives me nuts. I have to wait for the manga adaptation. I have to wait for the anime adaptation. I gotta wait for some sort of third-party media to show off your cool new gym leaders and champion and evil team and rival. All these things tend to be shown off better in other forms of media. You know what you could do? Let Pokemon be an RPG and stop doing this like not really though. It's almost like when I get introduced to 8 new gym leaders, I already know going into it that these 8 new gym leaders have no purpose in the story other than to be bosses. And that's all that matters. And in my mind, I'm like, cool. But I'm also like, you have so many of these gym leaders. You have so many stories. And we don't get anything. You could be reusing characters. Hisui kind of does things with that. And that's because that game's a different beast in itself. But it's frustrating that I go into a new region and I'm stuck just doing base level stuff with characters with fully fleshed out designs. Especially when you start doing that thing like Gen 5 did, where you start giving them side jobs. Oh, this one cooks. This one's a farmer. This one's a model. This one is just a combat instructor. This one's a social media icon. And we do nothing with it. It only seems like that's only relevant if it has something to do with their like gym challenge before you actually just fight the gym outright. And I'm just kind of like, that's a waste of characters. So you know what you could do? Add in quest lines that you don't necessarily have to do and you're not required to do, but can expand more on these characters that have been shown off. Even have it cross-reference different generations. Why is it that there are like these weird touches in certain games that are just never brought up again, right? Like Caitlyn, who is the Elite Four in Generation 5, but is a like frontier brain in Generation 4. You have characters who cross generations, like how Cynthia is available in Generation 4, 5, and I think 7. And it's like, what? Why are these, or Red, same thing, shows up in multiple generations, but we do no lore with him. We do no creative stuff with these characters. They're just stuck. Use them for quest lines. Use them for side stories. Give me an experience that isn't stuck behind DLC like all the other modern games are doing. Like the recent Scarlet and Violet DLC that wants to go, hey, by the way, here's Clay's daughter for no reason. What are we doing? You're just showing off characters' daughters for no reason, but then I can't do anything other than the story stuff with the character? Why are you doing that? They also added this thing in Gen 8 where they just started making a exclusive trainer for every typing, right? You had your gym leaders, you had your rivals, but then you had these new characters that popped up in DLC, and Scarlet and Violet does the same thing. Well, it starts introducing a major character for each Pokemon type. Some of these characters are not relevant in the plot, but they're just in the game with unique dialogue and animations that represent a type, and we don't get nothing from these characters. It makes no sense as an RPG not to let this game be an RPG. Show them off. Let them do different things. Let it be an adventure that isn't just stuck to the main plot of the game. Also, on that same line, pick a tone, okay? Pokemon is like all over the place with what it wants to do. Traveling different dimensions. People falling from different dimensions and getting stuck in certain timelines. The professor being dead. Just killing professors and being replaced by robots who then sacrifice themselves to save people's lives. Oh, main character, your parents are dead for some weird ass reason. We're still talking about fun Pokemon stuff, right? I'm going to school, right? Yeah, but your mom's dead. Pick a tone and stick with it. This weird, like, bouncy up and down thing just feels weird and awkward, and it frustrates me. So pick a tone, or at least have the tone change be gradual, like this wavy line that goes further up. And speaking of things that also need to change, put in level scaling. You got so close with Scarlet and Violet by giving me all this freedom. You know what hurt a lot? When I still walked up to a gym and realized the gym is at level 22 and I've been playing the game for 16 hours, meaning I'm in my 30s at this point in the game. Well, if you had level scaling in, we wouldn't have these problems, would we? So maybe put level scaling in. That would help. Just saying. Just saying. Put it in!
I'm about to bust.
Another thing I think is pretty frustrating with modern Pokemon is that you guys obviously want to be more cinematic. You want to have a more theatrical type experience, a story-driven experience with all these crazy cutscenes, especially in Generation 8 and 9. And I'm starting to just realize that you guys just need to commit to voice acting. It's not even that I need it, but you're showing me cutscenes of characters talking and singing, and I'm sitting here going, there's no words coming out of their mouths. I wouldn't even care about this, but you're acting like you want to be a modern game, but you're still terrified of voice acting. Zelda is older than you and has fully committed to voice acting now. It has gotten to the point now that either you dial back your cutscenes or you put voices behind the words, because Pierce's singing was weird when all we kept hearing was just the music and never the words out of his mouth. So yes, go ahead and do the voice acting, because I think you want to do it. You're just being weird about it and it's making the experience weird. So please stop that. Next thing, you need to rework how the wild trainers work. One of the changes in Scarlet and Violet is that the wild trainers don't really have to be approached anymore. They don't just stop you if you run across their line of sight. You have to walk up to them and engage them to even trigger a battle, which cool, player choice. I completely understand that. Bad news is, why are they even there? Realistically, all you have to do is just grind wild Pokemon, and you made that even easier in Gen 9. So my question then is, what is the point of a wild trainer? You need to do something else with them or take them out of the game. Realistically, it'd be weird to take them out of the game, so you need to revamp them. They need to either give you certain bonuses or extra incentives to fight them, or change them back to where they will catch their attention if you walk in their path of sight. Because it's weird now to have these static trainer models just standing in an area by themselves doing maybe an idle animation and then not engage with you unless you walk up to them and be like, hey, do you want a box? I would bet money that most trainers or most Scarlet and Violet players still have a game that is mostly full of wild trainers they have never fought. Because once again, they don't level scale. And secondly, there's no incentive to fight them. You can even use this as an example to tie into quest lines, right? Do side quests with some of the trainers. And if you fight them, they will give you a dex entry that, you know, the mon that you can't necessarily see in your version of the game because, you know, we still have the other version coming out. Like, there's got to be something to do with them because at this point, they're kind of just a worthless inclusion. And it feels like you're just wasting time remodeling a new generation of bug catchers or youngsters or pretty ladies or family mans or Pokemanics. Like, you gotta do something with them because at this point they're just kind of worthless NPCs. This perfectly kind of bleeds into the next issue, which is that even though you've properly fixed the level design, I would say since Frozen Tundra on Sword and Shield, you fixed the whole uninteresting level design for open world Pokemon games, right? Hisui had good level design and Scarlet and Violet overall has good level design, but if you mix in this cool like characters getting side missions if you're in certain areas and triggering storylines using multiple characters, it'll help flesh out the world a bit because right now it's just a bunch of different landmarks and land masses that are primarily classified by which Pokemon you can catch there, which is perfectly cool. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we want more. And finally, I think the most important change, I want Pokemon to finally make a lasting change on its gameplay again. You can say whatever you want about Mega Evolutions or Z moves or Gigantamax, Dynamax forms or Terrassalization, but none of these have been long lasting. These have been stop gaps to make things interesting without actually making things interesting, and as a result we end up getting just kind of more of a mediocre experience that's just gimmicky for this next 3 years, and then it'll change in another 3 years. Pokemon is a series that is near and dear to my heart. It's probably one of the first gaming franchises up there with Mario and Sonic that I tried and fell in love with so quickly and easily with a combination of the anime and the video games. So I would like to see the series succeed more and more as time goes on. And I don't like the disrespect it gets from a lot of other gamers because it's considered a children's game. Just because a game is colorful doesn't necessarily mean it's just for children. Mario can transcend generations. I feel Pokemon can definitely do the same thing. But they've got to start making more lasting changes because people start complaining about the meta. Now things haven't changed, and then we go into a new generation and the meta changes again because you've changed the gimmick. Now it's about another completely different gimmick. You learn the Terrassalization meta, now it's the new gimmick of the generation meta, and we're just like, dude, make some proper changes. One of the things I think we've all talked about is that certain typings are absolutely screwed. Ice types, hey, fix the ice type, people. Please fix the ice type. That's like one of the major changes you could easily do to help these mons become more viable. Because we obviously have a power creep problem, hence why you're making Alolan and Galarian and Hisuian versions of mons in the first place. So it's obvious we have problems, and you know we have problems. So stop trying to do these weird stop gaps thinking that Terrassalization is gonna stave off the criticism, because if anything, it just creates new problems. I think Gen 9 did a decent things for ice types, but it didn't do enough, and I think that's important. Why is it that Gen 6 is the last generation to make some meaningful change in the Pokemon meta that actually long lasted? You know how long ago Gen 6 was? Over a decade ago. I think that's a problem. Pokemon is an absolutely amazing franchise, but everybody struggles and power corrupts. And let's be real here, when you're told that you're number one and the best for so long, you tend to forget that, hey, you could still make mistakes. And Pokemon has definitely made its mistakes. We're not even going to get into the specifics of that because a lot of you already know. But the most important thing that needs to be taken note of is that mistakes are okay as long as we learn from them and do better next time. And I think Pokemon absolutely has the capacity to do it. They just have to put in the effort. So put in the effort. I'd like to thank you guys for watching and thank you guys for the support. This video has been edited by my boy Donnie Arts. His name will be tagged in the description, so go follow and support the channel or any other social media he may have for you to support. I really hope the next generation has already heeded a lot of this advice, and if not, then God, I hope it's better than Gen 9, because man, that was a lot. That was an experience, and yeah. And I hope ZA learned from its lessons from Hisui. but only time will tell. With that being said, though, this has been your boy, the Insane Game Freak. Life is indeed a game. I always play to win, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace. Oh. Yo.